Hey guys, it's Saturday, January 25th, 2025. Happy Sabbath. I had the thought upon waking up this morning that the cross is the warp and woof. That's exactly how it was worded in my mind. I just woke up and that thought popped into my head. The cross is the warp and woof. And immediately I had the thought of this verse here. If any man shall come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross and follow me. That's in Matthew 16:24. Now, when Yahushua said this, he had not been crucified yet, and none of his disciples, I think, at that point even really knew what was going to happen or that there would be a cross involved in his death. I think he had been telling him he was going to die, but I'm not sure he'd gone into the detail about the cross at that point. So I don't know if this verse would have made a whole lot of sense to those listening to him at that point, what he was talking about there. Now, maybe he had told them, and I'm not sure, but that verse is what came to mind when I had that thought this morning, that the cross is the warp and woof. Now, let me explain. There is one reference or a couple references in Leviticus to the warp and the woof, and it's in Leviticus 13, 52, 53. It's really talking about describing how leprosy can get up into the threads of the fabric. All right, 51 even mentions warp or woof. So what the warp and the woof are is a weaving term, and it is where the warp is actually the threads that go up and down, and the woof are the threads that go across. And so the warp and woof is woven fabric or cross-woven fabric. And I'm going to put a picture of the warp and woof in the thumbnail for this video so you can see it. But it is a cross-woven fabric. And I wonder if that thought that I had this morning, that the cross is the warp and woof, is describing, instead of taking up a crucifixion stake necessarily, we're to take up our tents. Now let me explain what I mean by that. So when the tent fabric was made, it was a warp and woof pattern. They would weave these threads together and form the fabric for the tents. And I firmly believe that in the wilderness, when the Father led the children out of Egypt, he placed a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night to guide the children in the wilderness. And I believe that Yahushua was that cloud by day and that pillar of fire by night. That he represented the sign of the Father's presence there with the children in the wilderness. And the instruction to them was, when you see that cloud by day move or that pillar of fire by night, you gather your tent quickly and you get ready to go. You must follow. As soon as you see that move, you've got to gather your things and go. And so if you're in the wilderness and you're following this cloud by day or this pillar of fire by night, your focus is going to be on that sign. If you see that sign begin to move, you got to go quickly, gather your tent, gather your cross-woven fabric, right, with the stake and all that holds the tent up and all of your belongings, and you got to get ready to go. And so when Yahushua tells us there that if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me, he had been the sign that they followed before. When they would gather up their tents, which would be their cross-woven fabric that they used for tent covering, and they would follow wherever he led, which meant that the moment you woke up, if you're in the wilderness and that's your sign to follow, the moment you stick your head out of your tent, you're looking at that cloud. You're looking to see, has he moved? You're looking to see that pillar of fire at night. Your focus is on that sign. Their focus was on the Father, obviously, but you see what I'm saying, that they were always like in the corner of their eye, they were always watching to see if that cloud or that fire was moving. Because that meant that they had to gather their things quickly and go. They had to take up their cross-woven fabric and move, right? Now, he could have been talking about his crucifixion stake there in Matthew 16:24. Could very well have been doing that, because right there in the next verse he says, for whosoever will save his life shall lose it, and whosoever will lose his life for my sake shall find it. Now, that could mean laying your life down. Remember, Yahushua says, greater love has no man than this, that they lay down their life for their friends. But he had shown me a while back that that doesn't necessarily mean that you die for people around you. It could mean just laying down your life, your plans for the day, your agenda, your activities. You lay those things aside when you see someone else in need. You don't let your plans get in the way of that. You lay those plans aside and you go help that person that you see in need. And I believe that that's what he means there on a, lesser level, just laying your life down for your friends. Yes, some people do die for their friends. But I've got a grandfather who died in World War II. He could have escaped and jumped out of the plane he was piloting, but there was a crewman there in the plane that had been injured, and he couldn't jump out to safety. So my grandfather remained in the plane when he could have parachuted out to safety so that his crewmen didn't have to die alone. And they both died together. I've heard that my whole life, how he laid down his life for his friend. But it could mean something more simple than that. It could mean laying down your plans. And so it's possible that what Yahushua was talking about there is taking up a crucifixion stake and following him. But if he was that pillar of fire by night or that cloud by day in the wilderness, it was expected that when he moved, you packed up your cross-woven fabric and you followed him immediately without delay. We know that obedience to the Father is to immediately act upon what he tells you to do. And delayed obedience is actually disobedience. If that cloud by day or that pillar of fire by night had moved and people delayed in following him, even though they gathered their things and did eventually, that delay is disobedience. We have got to keep our focus on him. The moment you wake up in the morning, you look to see if that cloud has moved. You look to see if that pillar of fire is on the move. You've got to react quickly. So your focus must be on those things, on Yahushua, on the Father. Don't let your focus be on the enemy. The enemy is definitely on the move these days. We see all the signs. I'm just asking you and encouraging you that if your focus will remain on him, seek him first above all things. Follow what his Son taught above any teaching of any other man. And you follow where he leads. You can trust him. And just every day ask him if there's something you need to do to gather your belongings, your things, and be ready to go. Don't let the enemy be your focus. Let the Father and his Son be your focus. And he'll guide you where you need to be. All right, so we're living in a very tenuous time right now where there's a lot of focus on what the enemy's doing. And it's causing anxiety and stress and chaos in most situations. I would just ask you that if you will focus on his light and don't give the enemy the satisfaction and the control by being anxious about what you're seeing in the world right now. Let the Father be your light. He's going to guide you. But when we let the enemy be our focus, we give power to the enemy by our focus. And whatever you fear becomes the master over you. Fear the Father. Put him first in your life. Follow what his Son taught, and you'll be all right. I just want to encourage you all with this. Thank you all for listening, and have a blessed and restful Sabbath.